So what is the CAGED system? In short, the CAGED system is a way to connect the entire fretboard using 5 forms. Each letter in the word CAGED signifies a form. So many would say like the C form, A form, G form, E form, and D form. But I found after over 3 decades of teaching it that it makes way more sense in the long run that instead of labeling each form with a letter, instead you signify it with a number. For example, C would be the first form, A would be the second, G would be the third, E would be the fourth, and D would be the fifth form. Once a form is memorized, you can already play it in every key since each form is movable. For example, if you learn the first form and your song is in the key of D, you could play it here on the fretboard. But if a song is in a different key, let's say the key of G, all you have to do is move it to the corresponding place on the neck. Same form, different location. This means you can now play the first form in all 12 keys. Once you learn the rest of the forms, you can stack them much like Tetris or puzzle pieces, and you'll have the entire fretboard to traverse. And they'll always be in that order, by the way, 1 through 5. And then when you get to 5, it returns back to 1 and starts over again. So the diagram shows all the forms stacked in the key of D. With the CAGED system, you can play chords, obviously, along with chord fragments. You can play scales of all kinds. And speaking of that, I'm actually going to include a lead for you to learn in this upcoming lesson. And it's totally going to follow the CAGED system using the first form only in the key of D. And I'm actually going to add a backing track so that you could play over the top of it as well and really feel like you're locking into the music, like you're playing with a band. So that's my short introduction to the CAGED system deep dive lesson that you're about to see. Have fun. Okay, everyone, welcome to another deep dive. I'm excited because I've covered this quite a bit on the website, but I really want to go deep on each one of the forms of the CAGED system. The CAGED system's a little bit of a mystery sometimes. When people hear the name, they know it's important because a lot of people talk about it, but it's kind of hard to break into it correctly. I found that it took me a lot of years of teaching it and labeling things in weird ways before I finally figured out the best way to convey the information so that it makes sense to people that already know some basics. And here's the good news. If you really just know a couple things, for example, 5 open chords on the guitar, you could start to put together the CAGED system in its entirety. If you only know one form, you could still go deep with one form, which is what we're going to do today. So let's start off with the most obvious starting point, which is the first form of the CAGED system. So if you take this chord shape now, the first form, and we start to play with it a little bit. For example, you could take both of the C notes, which are the root notes of this chord. See, those are the 2 C's. And you can connect them in several different ways. The most obvious way is going to be with a major scale. So we're going to do this eventually. Isn't that cool? We just took this shape. We took the octave points and we played a major scale between them. That's huge for people. It's really big when you start to explain that you can also easily change that into a major pentatonic in the future, which I always think of my girl. So that's going to be your major pentatonic sound right there. You could also do minor scales, by the way. Don't think this is only major. Eventually, we're going to be able to do that as well. But did you notice I'm still starting on the C and ending on the C? I think of them as like 2 points, maybe in the water, and you can swim or you can run if you're on land from one point to the other using, different paths. So the path that I took first was major scale, then I did major pentatonic and so on. So I'm basically putting bookends on something and just playing what I want in between them. All right, so we have the C chord shape here. We're going to call this the first form. That's the biggest takeaway for what I want you to learn today, is that the first form, and then next time we're going to do the second form and so on. Okay, so what can we do within this to, expand on it a little bit, to really understand it? My thing that I love to teach people is how to move it around the neck so that you could take this one form, the first form, and like I showed you earlier, you could move it up 2 frets, you could move it any amount of frets you want to create any major chord in this case. So let's do this. Let's play the C chord using the first form. See the terminology? You kind of have to get used to it. All I want you to do is refret this shape using your other fingers. That sounds weird, right? Here's what I mean. Take your pinky and go to the 5th string 3rd fret. So now that's on the C. Take your ring finger and place it on the 4th string 2nd fret. That's your E. Play your open G. Middle finger will now fret the 2nd string 1st fret, which is the C as well. And then we have the open E. Now this is going to feel ridiculous. Like it might even hurt your hand a little bit, so be careful. Make sure you do your stretches, your finger yoga, and all that good stuff. But that you don't really have to play this perfectly. It's just to get an idea that a form is a form. Whatever fingers you're using, you're still playing the same form right here. But what this allows us to do now is free up the index finger. The reason this is so crucial to be able to do this is so that we can move it up, let's say 2 frets. So bring all of those notes towards you, 2 frets. And it'll sound weird at first. Listen to this. It's cool, but it's not like a genuine major chord. There's more color added to that one. So if you take your index finger now and just bar across on the 2nd fret, you will have a pure major chord. Pretty wild looking. Remember to give your hand a rest if you need it. Now I'm really only barring across the 1st, 2nd, 3rd strings. It's kind of like minimalist barring. You could bar all the way across if you want to. Some people do this. I just think that's a waste of energy though to bar all the way across when you really only have to bar the first 3 strings with this form. Here's why. If we go back to the original shape, the first form in open position, which strings are open right here? Because we're not playing the 6th string. But our 1st string is open and our 3rd string is open. This is a great visualization. Imagine this nut right here, this silver thing. Yours might be white. I just happen to have a metal nut on this guitar. So think of this nut as doing the job of allowing the open strings to ring out. As you move a shape towards you up the neck, you have to, in essence, bring that up with it so that it creates the correct notes. Just like a capo. If you've ever used a capo before, it's really just replacing, the nut of the guitar or your finger, depending. So let's really put that into action. Let's go back to this first form shape using our pinky, ring, and middle fingers. Bring it up 2 frets. Lay your index finger across the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings at the 2nd fret. Might take a while to get a really clean sound, but that's really crucial that you could do that. Now let's give our hand a little bit of a rest by bringing it up even further to make the frets a little more compacted together. So keep an eye on your pinky. I want you to drag that all the way up until you're at the 7th fret of the 5th string. Keep the same first form happening. Play through that. Okay, we're playing different chords using one form. And you can keep moving up if you want to. F, G, A. Eventually it gets too skinny to really be effective, so you really want to watch out that you don't go too high at first. It might kind of freak you out. So somewhere in the middle is a good place to be because it feels pretty comfortable. All right, so here's the best part now. Do you remember when we were playing in open position? And I said to find the root notes. We had C to C. And then I played a major scale. We're going to be able to do that anywhere on the neck. And we're really only talking about this one form today. So you're already going to be mobile all around the neck, being able to play scales, do backing tracks. It's going to be really cool. Play along to backing tracks is what I mean. So let's do this. Let's only play the first octave right now of the C major scale. I'll put the tab up and the dots and all that good stuff on the screen. You can go backwards too. And then finish with the chord. It's a great way to practice. Now, once you could do that, I want you to refret. You should be pretty used to that by now. Slide it up 2 frets and bar. Make sure you have the right sound of the chord. And now I want you to notice that your pinky and your middle finger are playing the root notes now. Isn't that cool? So that's a D and that's a D. You can connect those two with the major scale. It'll look like this now. chord and give your hand a break. I was getting hand cramps the first time I tried this because I was not used to that open hand shape like that. It just felt really awkward, but I got used to it over time. Isn't that great? You just played a D major scale using the first form. Do you realize what this means? It means you can move anywhere on the neck and play any major scale you want. To prove that, I'm going to move up 2 more frets. We're going to go to the 7th fret with our pinky on the 5th string. Make sure the first form is sounding pretty good. Remember, it's only a 5-string chord shape. Go from where the pinky is to where the middle finger is using a major scale. See how the shape doesn't change? So let's say somebody's like, can you play G major scale? Okay, well, I just have to make sure my pinky, which is where the root note's going to be, has to land on a G. So we keep moving up. There's an F sharp, there's a G. Create the first form. So that's technically a G major chord right there. Play the scale from G to G. So any type of lead line that you want to do in the key of G major, you could do right there, which is so cool. We're going to move beyond just the 1 octave today because I want to show you a couple of backing track licks that we could put together. I'm actually going to include the backing track at the end of this video so you can play along to it. So to cover how that works, we're going to jump right to the first form, but we're going to start with our pinky on the 5th fret, which is D. So here we have a D major chord. We already know how to do the major scale from this octave to this one. But I want to go beyond that a little bit because the backing track solo that I'm playing, I'm going above it a little bit. It's a lot of fun too to have extended notes. And by the way, it's just an extension of the notes you're already playing. So the D major scale, if I were to continue on here, I could add those notes to this without having to shift to other, forms. So I'm going to stop on that point, but then proceed from there. I'm not going to go, although in the future you can hit that 3rd octave, but we're going to stay right here. Those are extra 5 notes, which is nice. Technically 4, but I'm recounting this octave as a note. Then come all the way back down. You could also go below. Keep that in mind, all right? I'll put all the dots up so you can play with it if you want to, but in this backing track situation, we don't ever have to go below this D, which is kind of cool. Seems like a billion notes, I know, but it's really only the 7 notes of the major scale, which is great. Now, if you could play that, we could start to do licks. And within this lesson, I want to make sure that you could play a backing solo, solo to a backing track, I should say. And it's just a couple of, phrases and ideas mixed into this shape. So, for example, here's the first lick. So that's just a quick musical phrase. I stayed within the boundaries of this form. You could probably hear it. I'm adding little things like, if you want to make it a little more basic, you can. Like that, that's fine. I'm not really sure where your level is for soloing, but feel free to add these little vibratos and stuff and these hammer-ons if you want to. All right, so that's the first phrase. And I'm doubling that part at the end. So I'll play the backing track and just show you that one phrase. The backing track is a little bit yacht rocky. It's not like super involved or in depth. It's almost like if you're just jamming 4 chords with friends. It's the sort of feel I was going for. Pretend you're on a boat or something. All right, so after you do that, that's the first phrase. And then there's a little bit of a walk down. So we jump to the 4th string and we do a pull off from the 4th fret to the 2nd fret and we land on the D at the bottom. It's cool. I can start to tell you the notes and you know what I'm talking about, hopefully. So we have this so far. I like taking things phrase by phrase like that and then putting them into the song so you can really hear how it works. So once again with the backing track. All right, the next part is a little obvious because it follows the scale pretty well. So it's... See, I'm just starting on the D and going up the major scale and then coming down a little bit. And then we're going to go like this. Just 2 notes. So I'm jumping to the 3rd string, going 4th fret to 2nd fret. There's another one of those quick hammer-ons that you can add if you want to. So. There's a connector lick that's kind of difficult. You could leave it out if you want to, but I go like this. And there might be some bleed over, and that's okay. You don't have to make everything totally separate. Let it breathe a little bit. If you end up with like a chord sound, it's okay because we're playing chord tones, which is really obviously good in this case. All right, so we have this so far. Now, don't worry because that's probably the hardest this whole solo is going to get. We're going to do a lot of repeating and then we're going to do like a secondary part, but here's what we do the next time. Everything was the same except I added an E the second time around. So the first time I went like that. The second time around I went like that. Just to change it up a little bit. I think it sounds pretty tasty. I hate it when people use that adjective, but so the second time around we have. Now, we don't have to play that crazy, descending lick on the second time around because we have to get ready for the change. So this is like the B section now. And that is just going to be a series of triads using this form, which is a great way to connect your notes to the chords that are happening in the background. So the first chord is going to outline a D chord, or the first triad is going to outline a D chord. So that's all you need to do. You notice it's still within the shape that we practiced all this time. D triad, that's all that is. So D, A, and F sharp. That's all those were. Then in the background, an A chord hits. So we go like this. Some guitar players, they really stick with triads over chords, and they always sound incredible because they're, following the movement of the chords instead of just playing a scale and hoping. So this is a great way to really glue yourself to the music. So once again, the D, A, G is the next chord. That one's kind of weird because it's spread out over 3 strings. And then it goes B minor to A really quick, so we're going to go like this. See, those are the triads of a B minor chord. You might think we're going to land there, but the first time around we're going to do a quick C sharp to E, which is going to whip us back into this. What's cool is you just repeat that again, and the second time around you don't do the whip up note. You just stay on the A and prepare yourself for the next part. Okay, so far it sounds like this. Take a breath there. Now we have the kind of reminds me of this song by Sophie B. Hawkins from a long time ago. It has that same melody. If you know who she is, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, the next time through, don't worry, we're just going to jump up an octave. Here's the beauty of these forms. If you play the first form here, starting at the 5th fret, so D major, and you just move it up 12 frets. So we go all the way up to here. A lot of guitar players know this, but if you go up 12 frets, you're automatically an octave higher. So you don't have to learn any new shapes. We're still going to be using the first form, but now we're way the heck up at the 17th fret. This could be difficult to really squish together. So I'm not super worried that you could play the chord shape cleanly. I just want you to play the solo correctly. So now we get this. See how everything's just going to be squished together, but now we have an octave higher of a solo, which makes it different sounding, and I like it. I'm actually going to add a little wah, I think. It's kind of got a cool sound. Makes it a little more beachy, if you will, for that yacht rock sound. Okay, I'm going to play it with the backing track, see how it sounds all together. Oh, by the way, at the very end, all I want you to do is play this chord. So that's just a D with a 5th interval at the top of it and a 5th interval at the bottom of it. So you get this. It's going to be our final chord. All right. High triads. I'm dying to go like this. Just kidding. Here's the big finish. Messed up a couple little notes here and there, but the trick is to just fake it and just keep going and keep smiling. All right, that's probably the best tip I can give you today. Just kidding. So do you see the power of this first form? And that's just one backing track, and that happened to be in the key of D. That's why we did it here, starting at the 5th fret. If suddenly you go on YouTube and you find a backing track that's an E, just move it up so your pinky starts on the 7th fret. And just like we talked about before, anywhere you want, you can play it now. You can also change it to just pentatonic. I mentioned that earlier, but when you really put that into practice, it's going to be really sweet. So on the website, I'm going to be doing the 4 other forms plus 4 different backing tracks for them. So it's going to get pretty intensive. And then we'll move on to the minor versions of the CAGED system, and you can go really far with that as well. So hopefully that was a good amount to get you started and to really have you experiment on your own to really get a good feel for it and really go off with those backing tracks, and the one after the video too, that's going to be the one that I just played, so you could practice this one as well. Okay, everyone, have fun with it, and we'll catch you at the next lesson. And we'll see you at the website if you're not there already for the rest of them. Okay, bye-bye.